This is just dumb.
What's up, my Yuki Bros? I'm your host, the one, the only, the RJB0. Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! In Business Casual. Today I am bringing back one of my favorite segments of all time. That is my Business Casual deck reviews. This is going to be a review of one of the decks that I was actually planning on reviewing farther in the future. I have a few that are queued up that I was supposed to be doing ahead of time, but I actually wanted to review this deck now because of all the changes that are being made to it, and because it is actually going to be released in the OCG on the 23rd of December, so that's this week that this deck is going to be coming out. That deck is the Magician Pendulum structure deck that's coming out in the near future, or how it is modifying the existing Magician Pendulum deck. Now, the way that I do Business Casual deck reviews is I usually do a little bit of explaining of the deck and its strategy. I then talk about the things that I think make it good, then I talk about the weaknesses, and then I give it a bit of a rating as to how I think it is for Business Casual play. That's, is it competitive, is it fun, and does it help you become a more skillful player? So I'm going to get right down to that. What is the Magician Pendulum deck? Well, it is going to be an expansion on, like I said, the current Odd Eyes Performapal Magician Pendulum-y strategy that we have in the TCG that a few players have been playing with. It focuses more on level 4 magicians with pendulum effects that happen when they get destroyed, and pendulum effects that also destroy the monsters themselves. It is also available for making the Supreme Dragon King, or whatever it's called, Zark. I'm not going to be talking about a Zark-based build in this particular review. I'll be talking about later, if you want to hear it, my thoughts between the build without Zark and the build that focuses on Zark. Today I'm going to be focusing more on the build that is focused exclusively on the magicians themselves. So its strategy mainly has to do with stocking up pendulum monsters and making explosive plays that allow you to control the board, as well as putting in a lot of damage. It is very much a high complexity, very toolboxy, control and aggro deck in one package. I have not been able to decide which one is the more dominant win condition, but I'm going to go through a few of the new cards and talk a little bit about the strategy, and you can kind of suss that out for yourself. So the first really important set of cards that came out is the magicians themselves. Those are Iris Magician, Violet Poison Magician, Black Fang Magician, Toon Magician, there's Startime Magician, which is the new Xyz, and then there is White Wing Magician. Now, I'm not going to be talking a lot about White Wing Magician because the builds that I see being successful of this deck don't use it a lot, but I will explain. White Wing Magician is a level 4 tuner pendulum that allows you to, well, it's a tuner pendulum, but its effect is that if it is used for a synchro summon, then it is banished from the field, and its pendulum effect is it can negate the effect of a card which targets a Magician Pendulum monster and then destroys itself. The other magicians I think are the most important ones, starting with the most important one, the absolute most important one, which is Iris Magician. Iris Magician, when it is destroyed, allows you to search out a Pendulumgraph card from your deck. I'll be explaining those in a second, but it can also, while it's in the Pendulum zone, target a Dark Spellcaster monster that you control, and then make it the damage it deals when battling with another monster double, and then it destroys itself. So it destroys itself to double a monster's damage, and then you get the search off of its effect for being destroyed. And by the way, none of these have a limit to the number of times that you can use their destroyed effect. So you can use Iris Magician's search effect as many times per turn as you like. The second one is Violet Magician, or Violet Poison Magician, which when it is destroyed, destroys a face-up card on the field that is targeted. Violet Poison Magician, when it is in the Pendulum zone during the damage step, can add attack points to a Dark Spellcaster monster on your side of the field, and then destroy itself. So during the damage step, this is very, very good because you can make your opponent's, or make your monster's attack increase, allowing you to destroy an opponent's monster that you wouldn't be able to destroy otherwise, and then also destroy another card on the field. It's very, very good. Then there's Black Fang Magician, which can have the attack of an opponent's monster and then destroy itself. Its monster effect when it's destroyed is that you can summon a Dark Spellcaster monster from the graveyard. And then finally there is Toon Magician, which is a level 4 Pendulum Tuner, which when it is Pendulum summoned once per turn, it's a hard once, so only one Toon Magician can be activated, but it can summon a Magician monster from your deck, and then if that monster leaves the field, it is banished instead. And so you can use that for some crazy synchro or Xyz plays just off of Pendulum summoning that one monster, which creates the availability of massive pluses, allowing you to go into things like Ignister, which is an extremely powerful card in this deck because it allows you to destroy your Pendulum monsters in order to remove cards from your opponent's side of the field without destroying or targeting. So it triggers your most important cards, as well as removing problem cards that your opponent controls. It also allows you to go into the final monster, which is one of the most important monsters in the deck, one of the biggest changes, which is Startime Magician. Startime Magician is an Xyz monster that allows you to detach a material to search out a Dark Spellcaster from your deck, so you can search out any one of your Magicians or the Sorcerers, which I'll talk about in a second, and it once per turn can stop a Pendulum monster from being destroyed by instead milling a Spellcaster monster from your deck to the graveyard. This is especially important because of the Pendulumgraph cards, specifically the Pendulumgraph of Spacetime, which is a continuous trap card which allows you to target a Magician Pendulum monster on the field and one card your opponent controls, and then destroy them both. However, if one of those cards doesn't get destroyed, as well as destroying the other target, you can also send a card on the field to the graveyard. Now this doesn't target nor does it destroy, which makes it incredibly effective with Startime Magician because you can target one of your Magicians, destroy it in big quotation marks, and a targeted card your opponent controls, but instead of being destroyed, you mill a card and then you get to send a card on your opponent's side of the field to the graveyard for free. That is absolutely incredible. And then there's the other Pendulumgraph card, which is the continuous spell card, Pendulumgraph of the Ages, which allows you to search out your Magicians when another Magician leaves the field, which happens all the time, which gives this deck great tutoring potential. So the final cards that I think are really, really important to this build, and it's especially one of them, are the Sorcerers, which are Chronograph Sorcerer and Astrograph Sorcerer. Now, I personally prefer Astrograph Sorcerer. Of the two of them, I don't actually run Chronograph Sorcerer because I think that its effect is less optimal, but these cards, when one of your monsters is destroyed, or one of your cards is destroyed, then you get to special summon it from your hand, and for Astrograph Sorcerer, you get to search out a copy of a monster that was destroyed this turn when it's summoned, and for Chronograph, you can special summon a monster from your hand. So I personally prefer Astrograph Magician, and they also have Pendulum effects, which allow them to destroy themselves or tribute themselves in order to activate Stargazer Magician and Timegazer Magician from your deck. I don't personally use those effects because I think their in-hand effects are much, much better, but those are things you can use. And then for the Zark build, which I will talk about another time, they also allow you to fusion summon Zark using cards from your graveyard, which is also very powerful. Now you'll notice once I start using, while you're watching my replays and things like that, and if I ever do a deck profile, which you all should let me know if I should do, that my build is very, very different from anything that we are familiar with. This deck totally rethinks the way that Magician Pendulum works, such that you almost use none of the cards that you would have in your original deck, besides Sky Iris, which is important for searching out extra Pendulum cards, and for triggering your Iris Magician or your Black Fang Magician, and things like Wisdom Eye, things that are generic Pendulum cards, are basically the only things that I think should carry over from the old version of the deck, and I'll talk about that if and when I make a deck profile. What I like about this deck is that it is incredibly explosive. You can make massive fields with extreme amounts of power using things like Ignister, using Castel, using potentially Zark if you run that in the build, using Odd Eye's Vortex Dragon if you run Odd Eye's Fusion, which I think you should, and you can generate an incredible amount of advantage off of turn one. I have many turn ones where I open with something like a +6, and it's very rare that the deck doesn't plus significantly on the first turn, or set up some of its back row using things like Pendulumgraph of the Spacetime or Echo Oscillation, which you can use defensively to destroy Violet Magician, draw a card, and then use Violet to destroy a card on your opponent's side of the field. So you can set up really good turn 1 boards with the deck and generate just incredible amounts of advantage. I've gotten up to like plus 14 out of the deck on turn 2. It's amazing. And you can splash in a variety of engines to diversify the strategy so it isn't as predictable, so that you can deal with a larger number of boards, and so that you can work around your opponent's strategies. But that really brings me to the deck's major weakness, which is that it is highly combo dependent, which makes it also very easy to disrupt. As a result, it's not great at breaking boards. There are ways that you can play through your opponent's cards, but you have to be very smart about breaking boards, because if you make one misstep, you're done for. Solemn Strike and Solemn Warning are also very, very powerful against this deck. One thing that I may recommend, and this is a change that I'm going to be making to my own deck, is to start running things like Archfiend Eccentric, which can take out your opponent's back row so that you only have to deal with your opponent's monsters, which is much easier to do in this deck. The other problem is that it is often OTK'd very easily. That is improving in my current build, and as cards are revealed for the deck, but it is the deck that I have lost to the most while I've been testing this deck has been Fluffle and Frightfur. Things like Pendulumgraph of Spacetime really help you with that, and especially since your Startime Magician can protect your monsters, that can help out a lot. The deck has the potential for a lot of disruption, and these two things are kind of where I get into the techs of the week. The very first is Kuraz the Light Monarch. Kuraz the Light Monarch is an incredible card in this deck because it allows you to trigger your magicians, especially Iris, while also getting to draw cards. You can take out an Iris Magician and a Violet Poison Magician, which allows you to destroy a card on your opponent's side of the field, search out a Pendulumgraph, and then draw 2 cards off of Kuraz, and that's from your Pendulum summon because you can do it on Special Summon. Also, Kuraz can destroy problem cards that your opponent has at a 1-for-1. You do take out their card and it lets them draw, but you don't actually lose anything out of that. So if your opponent has something like a Vanity's Emptiness that you have to tribute summon to get rid of, you can then special summon from your hand, and even though your opponent drew a card, it's probably going to be a card of lesser value than Vanity's Emptiness. Kuraz has been an incredible card for this deck. And the other one, and this was a recommendation from one of my friends on the Business Casual Facebook page, was EVILSWARM Nightmare. EVILSWARM Nightmare allows you to disrupt your opponent's plays very, very easily, because when your opponent special summons a monster, you can choose to flip it face down. You can do that twice per turn with it, because it has 2 Xyz material and no limit to the number of times per turn that you can use its effect. Those 2 techs have been very, very helpful in dealing with this deck's weaknesses, but it still has them. So now I have to give it my Business Casual deck rating. Do I think that you should be playing this deck? I definitely think that you should play this deck. I think it is, first of all, going to be very competitive. It's second of all going to be very fun, and also it allows you to build skill in a lot of ways. So it's competitive because of this amount of explosiveness that it has available, and the variety of engines that you can work in means that it is very likely to be a contender in the meta, especially once Zodiac Beasts died down a little bit, and the OCG we're also seeing the other main competitor for this deck, ABC, getting weakened, and this deck can also deal with ABC fairly easily already. So I think it's going to be a very competitive deck. It's very strong. It's also really fun to play. There are a lot of creative things that you can do with it, and it has a steep learning curve, which adds to the skill level of the deck. And that actually means that it is a deck that is worth playing if you want to become a better player, because of the amount that you have to think through each play in order to ensure the optimal results. So I definitely think you should play this deck. If you want to see a deck profile of my build, that's the build that you've been seeing on the screen so far, this deck review, I would just let me know in the comment section below, and I will definitely try to get to that in the next week, probably before the deck comes out in the OCG, and then we can talk about that later. I will, before then, probably going to be talking about the difference between the Magician-centered build and the Zark-centered build. And that's the deck review. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below. And of course, subscribe for more decks, discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. Thank you all for watching. I'm your host, the one, the only, the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys.